Ethan Cole always believed he was the kind of man bad things simply didn't happen to. He paid his taxes. He cared for his sick mother. He worked a dull job hauling freight in a warehouse outside Phoenix. He wasn't special, wasn't reckless, wasn't someone anyone would call unlucky. Until the night he agreed to help a coworker move a set of boxes he didn't ask enough questions about. The boxes belonged to the Marrow Syndicate, a violent criminal network that operated out of abandoned industrial blocks and used freight workers as silent couriers. Ethan didn't know he was moving components for an illegal weapons shipment. He didn't know he was being filmed. And he didn't know police would raid the building right after he walked out. Within 72 hours, Ethan Cole went from anonymous warehouse worker to primary suspect in a weapons trafficking operation. His fingerprints were on the crates. His face was on camera. And the real criminals knew his name. At trial, Ethan stumbled over his answers, terrified and unprepared. The prosecutor painted him as a liar pretending to be naive. The jury believed every word, except Ethan's. He received 20 years in state prison. But the worst part wasn't the sentence. It was the prison intake officer leaning close and whispering, "Bad timing, Cole. The syndicate runs half this place. They think you talked." Ethan didn't even get to his cell before he felt every eye on him. Some curious, some hungry, some filled with a quiet, familiar hatred, the kind reserved for traitors. His assigned cellmate was the last thing he expected. Marcus Hale, a calm, middle-aged lifer with silver hair and an unreadable face. He didn't look cruel. He didn't look kind. He looked like a man who had learned to erase himself. Marcus didn't speak for the first hour. He sat on his bunk, carving a chess piece from soap. Ethan sat stiffly across, trying not to panic. Finally Marcus said, "You're the warehouse kid." Ethan swallowed. "I didn't do it." "Doesn't matter. What they think is what matters." Marcus looked up. "You're going to get a visit tonight. Don't fight. Don't run. Don't talk. You'll survive the first one." "The first?" Ethan whispered. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, in the dim corridor, 3 men approached Ethan. Syndicate tattoos. Hard eyes. Slow smiles. Ethan braced himself for the beating he knew he couldn't win. But Marcus stepped out of the shadows like he'd been waiting. "Not him," Marcus said quietly. 3 words. "Come." Controlled. The men froze. Then left. Just left. Ethan stared, trembling. Why would you help me?" Marcus returned to his bunk. "Because you're going to do something for me in return." He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Ethan had just learned his first prison truth. In freedom you pay with money. In prison you pay with favors. And every favor costs more than you can afford. And Marcus Hale, quiet, unreadable, carved from stone Marcus, had just decided Ethan Cole was worth keeping alive. Ethan lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying the moment Marcus intervened. He didn't understand why. He didn't know the price. But something about Marcus frightened him more than any syndicate soldier. Calm men didn't survive long in here. Unless they were dangerous in ways that didn't need to be spoken. Minutes before lights out, Marcus finally said, "You're here because you moved the wrong boxes." Pause. "You're staying alive because you're going to help me move something else." Ethan didn't sleep at all. Ethan woke before dawn, not because he slept lightly but because he'd barely slept at all. The noises of the tier, metal clanging, muffled arguments, the occasional shout, had been oppressive, but what kept him awake was Marcus. Marcus Hale sat on the lower bunk, perfectly still, perfectly awake as if he'd never closed his eyes. He wore the same calm expression as the night before, like a man who'd already accepted whatever fate waited for him. "You should eat early," Marcus said without looking up. "Less trouble in the chow line." Ethan hesitated. "Why did you stop those men?" Marcus finally turned his head. His eyes were gray and tired, not cruel, but hollow in a way that said he'd spent years burying things no man should carry. "Because," Marcus said, "you're useful." Ethan sank onto the metal bench bolted to the floor. "Useful how? I don't know anyone. I don't belong to anything. I'm not." "You're clean," Marcus interrupted. "Syndicate doesn't own you. The guards don't have you flagged. You're invisible. And invisible men can move quietly." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Move what?" Marcus didn't blink. "Information." Ethan felt colder than the concrete beneath his feet. He didn't understand the politics of prison, not yet, but he understood leverage. Marcus had it. Ethan didn't. "You owe me," Marcus said. Not loud. Not threatening. Just true. Ethan nodded because he had no choice. Breakfast smelled like scorched eggs in metal trays. In the chow hall, Inmates watched Ethan like they were measuring him, what he weighed in loyalty, fear, or usefulness. Marcus walked beside him and the looks shifted instantly. Not respectful. Cautious. Why do they listen to you? Ethan asked under his breath. Marcus didn't respond until they sat, backs to the wall. Because I have something they want, Marcus said. Knowledge. Secrets. Leverage. Everyone in here owes someone. Everyone here fears someone. And you? Ethan asked. I don't owe anyone, Marcus replied. And the people I fear are already dead. Ethan didn't know whether that made him safer or more terrified. Later that afternoon, a guard approached the cell. Cole, he said. You got a visitor. Ethan blinked. I don't. Who? The guard shrugged. Ask them. Ethan's mother couldn't travel. His co-workers wouldn't. He stepped into the visitation room, palms sweating. A man in a gray suit waited at the plastic table. Ethan froze. He recognized him from court. Assistant District Attorney Leonard Price. Mr. Cole, Price said with a smile that felt like a knife behind the ribs. How's prison treating you? Ethan sat slowly. Why are you here? Price slid a folder across the table. Ethan didn't open it. You were unlucky, Price said. Wrong place, wrong time. But maybe we can correct that. Ethan's heart skipped. You're offering an appeal? Not exactly. Price folded his hands. We need information on the Marrow Syndicate. They trust new inmates more than released ones. If you can give us names, locations, anything, we might revisit your case. Ethan exhaled. I don't know anything. Then learn, Price said. Ethan shook his head. They'll kill me. They won't, Price replied. Because we'll protect you. Ethan almost laughed. The man had no idea. Price leaned forward with the confidence of someone who believed institutions could solve everything. This could be your chance at redemption. The guard called time. Price stood, buttoned his suit, and walked away. Ethan didn't open the folder until he was alone in the hall. It wasn't evidence. It was a list of syndicate affiliates inside the prison, with blank spaces beneath each name. Blank spaces they wanted him to fill. Back in the cell, Marcus didn't look surprised. They approached you, Marcus said. Of course they did. You knew. Ethan whispered. Everyone knows. Price has been desperate to crack the syndicate for years. He offers the same deal to anyone new. Ethan handed Marcus the folder. Marcus flipped it open, scanning the blank spaces. Don't even think about it, Marcus said. You talk to the DA, you're dead. You talk to the syndicate, you're owned. So what do I do? Marcus tapped the folder. You survive. Ethan felt the weight of the choice crushing him. You said I owe you. What does that have to do with this? Marcus sat back on the bunk. I'm giving you a third option. Ethan waited, pulse pounding. You're going to help me bring someone down, but not the syndicate. Ethan stared. Who? Marcus looked up, and for the first time, Ethan felt something like real danger in the man's expression. The man who put me in here. Ethan's heartbeat thudded in his ears. He whispered, Price? Marcus smiled without warmth. You're a smart kid. That night, Marcus finally told Ethan the truth. He wasn't just another lifer. He was the prison's longest-running ghost, an inmate who'd survived riots, gang wars, and transfers because he had something no one else did. A memory that could destroy men in power. 20 years ago, Marcus said, voice low, Leonard Price built his career on a case he manufactured. Evidence planted. Witnesses coerced. I was the scapegoat. Ethan swallowed hard. You're saying he framed you? I'm saying he framed 5 men, Marcus corrected. I'm just the only one left alive. Ethan felt dizzy. Why tell me? Because now Price needs you, Marcus said. And that means we have leverage. Ethan shook his head. I'm nobody. He doesn't need me. He needs what I can get. Exactly, Marcus said. And that's why we're going to give him something. What something? Information, Marcus said. Not real. Not useful. Just enough to get his attention. Ethan's stomach twisted. You want me to lie to him? I want you to bait him, Marcus said. We control what he thinks you know. We feed him crumbs. When the time's right, we force him to make a mistake. What kind of mistake? Marcus looked Ethan dead in the eyes. The kind that gets him exposed. Ethan leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. He didn't want to be part of any of this. He didn't want syndicate eyes on him. He didn't want the DA using him. He just wanted the life he lost back. Marcus lowered his voice. You think you're here because you were unlucky, Marcus said. But the truth is, Price needed a patsy again. You were convenient. Disposable. Anyone could see that. Ethan clenched his fists. What happens if I don't help you? You die, Marcus said plainly. Either the syndicate kills you or Price abandons you. But if you help me... He paused. You walk out of here a free man. Ethan didn't trust him. But he trusted the system even less. And right now, Marcus was the only person keeping him alive. What do I have to do? Ethan asked. Marcus didn't smile. Marcus never smiled. You need to talk to Price, he said. Tell him you overheard a name. One he'll believe is valuable. Something that forces him to commit. Commit to what? Ethan whispered. To proving you wrong, Marcus said. And that's where we'll catch him. The next morning, Ethan approached the visiting officer. I need to see ADA Price, he said. The guard nodded. I'll pass it along. As Ethan walked back to his cell, syndicate members watched him with narrowed eyes. Marcus stood at the bars waiting, reading every expression in the block. This is the last moment you can back out, Marcus said. Ethan shook his head. No. I'm in. Marcus nodded once. Good, he said. Because today everything shifts. Ethan closed his eyes. He didn't feel brave. He felt owned by fate. And somewhere deep in the prison's routines, its secrets, its echoes, Ethan sensed something enormous beginning to move. Something he couldn't stop even if he wanted to. He had just made a deal with the deadliest kind of man. A man with nothing left to lose. Ethan stepped into ADA Morgan Price's office, and the door clicked shut behind him. Too quickly, too decisively. Price didn't offer a seat. He didn't offer a smile. He just watched Ethan, hands clasped, jaw tight, like a man guarding a secret he didn't want slipping out. Ethan, before you ask, yes, I reviewed your file, Price began. And no, this meeting never happened. That alone made Ethan's stomach twist. Price slid a folder across the desk. Inside were copies of Detective Rollins' original reports, except these versions weren't the ones Ethan remembered. Statements rewritten. Timestamps altered. A signature block missing. A cover-up. Rollins hadn't just framed him. Someone higher up had cleaned the path behind him. Why are you showing me this? Ethan whispered. Price lowered his voice. Because Rollins wasn't working alone. And the man who ordered this, he still works inside this building. Chills crawled up Ethan's spine. Before he could speak, a shadow passed the frosted glass window outside the office. Heavy boots. Pause. Then another. Price's eyes flicked toward the door, and for the first time Ethan saw fear in him. We don't have much time, Price said. You need to disappear. Tonight. If they realize you're digging, you won't make it to the end of the week. Ethan's pulse hammered. He had lived through prison riots, lockdowns, nights where he didn't think he'd see sunrise, but this was different. This was the system hunting him again. Price pressed a burner phone into his hand. When it rings, answer. That call will expose everything, if you survive long enough to hear it. Before Ethan could ask who was coming after him, the office door handle jiggled. Then turned. Then slowly pushed open. Ethan froze as a tall silhouette filled the doorway, the same broad shoulders he remembered from the night of his arrest. Detective Rollins. You and I need to talk, Rollins said, eyes cold. Right now. And Ethan understood the danger wasn't coming tomorrow. It was already here. Detective Rollins stepped inside and shut the door with a slow push, sealing Ethan and Price in the room with him. His eyes scanned the office, landing on the open file still sitting on the desk. A flash of irritation crossed his face, quick but unmistakable. So, Rollins said, voice low. You're digging again. Ethan didn't answer. Price shifted subtly, placing himself between them. Rollins smirked. Come on, Ethan. You did your time. You walked out. You should have stayed gone. There was something off about him, too calm, too certain. Like a man holding cards no one else had. You framed me, Ethan said quietly. Rollins didn't flinch. You were convenient. The room went silent. Price stiffened. Rollins, this isn't going away. The truth. Rollins raised a hand and Price froze mid-sentence, as if the gesture carried weight no one wanted to test. You think the truth matters? Rollins said. The man you're trying to expose, he built half the careers in this building. He gave the orders. I carried them out. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Who? Rollins stepped closer until Ethan could smell the cold trace of mint on his breath. Warden Keller. Ethan staggered back. Keller? The same man who kept him in solitary for weeks, who denied every appeal, who treated the prison like a personal kingdom, was behind the entire setup? Before Ethan could react, Rollins' phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at Ethan. They know you're here, Rollins said. And they don't want this conversation happening. Price paled. Ethan, you have to go. Now. Rollins didn't object, not because he was helping but because the decision wasn't his. Someone else had already decided what would happen next. Ethan grabbed the burner phone, pushed past Rollins and slipped into the hallway. Footsteps thundered from both ends, guards, officers, people who shouldn't have been moving in formation. They weren't coming for Price. They were coming for him. Ethan sprinted toward the stairwell, heart pounding as radios crackled around him. Target moving, don't let him leave the building. Target. Not a man. A problem to eliminate. He shoved through the exit door and burst into the cold afternoon air, lungs burning. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Cars shifted. Voices rose. The system that stole 30 years from him was trying to take the rest. And Ethan knew one thing. He didn't survive hell to die in a parking lot. He disappeared into the city shadows as chaos erupted behind him,